Hello. Welcome once again to Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris, the best college podcast, where we continue to explore the big questions about education, careers, and the future. But most importantly, the show that is empowering minds one episode at a time. I am your host, Professor Chris. Can't forget my drums to get us started. Once again, welcome to this edition of Let's Talk Ed. Before I get started, well wishes to all those affected by our two hurricanes, Helene and Milton, in Carolina, Florida, and Tennessee. Well, this is back to the segment Ask Professor Chris. So this is the segment that I'm addressing key topics or questions that either college students have sent in the past. I'm doing some research to kind of see what answers students need or questions they might not feel comfortable asking. I'm looking for all those, and I will be addressing them, as well as, once again, as you're watching this YouTube, in the comments, put your college questions in there. So, our topic for today is love in the classroom, a complex equation. Yes, love in the classroom can be a very, very complex and complicated, to say the least. So let's get right to it. Love in the classroom, a complex equation. Get ready. All right. Believe it or not, I don't know why I didn't think this was a hot topic, but it actually is. There were articles already there. You can read about them. I'll give you a couple of examples here. A professor abandoned a spouse and kids for a college student. This article was published in 2023, very recent, 2023, and this happened to be in the University of Chicago. If you want to read more about it, it's out there. Another one that I found was I Had an Affair with My College Dean, which was published July 10, 2024, this year. Professor slammed over affair with student 28 years younger than him, July 14, 2022. Just recently, I was actually listening to a segment on NPR. It was about an author that has published a book about her relationship with an instructor. And I believe she did say she was 30 years younger than him when this happened. And this was many years ago. They actually ended up getting married, but she addresses all the different complications and situations and what had happened. Statistically, there was actually 184 respondents pooled for a very quick poll on this subject matter, and 59.8% female. The 184 respondents included 59.8 females and 41.2 males, and 1/3 of both sexes reported flirting with their instructors. So yes, I mean, this is not a new topic. I'm sure it's happening and it's going on, and we can argue whether it's right or it's wrong. I'm going to take my stand. As you always know, this whole podcast is for the students, so I take my stand, in favor of the students, because I also know in the situations the students are the ones that are affected the most. So that being said, let's get right into the ethical considerations of why this situation, again, the situation is love in the classroom, why it can be complicated, why it can be a very complex equation to solve, but most importantly, talking about romantic relationships between professors, instructors, and their students. The first thing we have to remember is the power dynamics. 90% of the time, right, is initiated by the person with the most power. And usually it happens to be the instructor, the professor, or the person in high authority. Okay. So there is a power dynamic here that we need to understand as I discuss the ethical considerations that plays in this situation. The power dynamic and consent. We forget how much power we have, we, including myself as instructors, have. I think sometimes we forget that. We forget how much power we have as instructors, and unfortunately, how vulnerable our students can be. So once again, this is for the students, but I know there are some parents who watch this here, but I need you to reflect on the statement that I just made. As a student, instructors, yes, indeed do have power or control as they're teaching a class. I know how my students feel like their life ends if they don't get good grades, and so, rightfully so, right? Because if a student is either on financial aid or on a scholarship and they got to maintain a B, and they will do anything to get those grades, sometimes those students become very, very vulnerable in those situations. And unfortunately, the power dynamics that we have as instructors, we always have the upper hand, and we can lead the students into doing things that they probably don't want to do. So when we're talking about consent, and the argument has always been, well, the student is an adult. Yes, once again, you all tell me you're 18, you're 20, you're 24, you're an adult. But here's a situation where sometimes somebody needs to step in. Because I don't care how old you are. If you need a better grade, and there's a way to do that, right or wrong, sometimes we are tempted to go in that direction to get it. So again, we always have to remember the power we have as instructors and how vulnerable our students can be. So why is a student saying yes even though they want to say no? They're always going to say yes because we do have the power, and sometimes they feel like the yes is what is going to get them to get the best grade. And it looks like I'm talking to the instructors here, but I'm going to actually break it down. I'm going to get to a point where I talk about what the instructors should watch out for and what the students should watch out for. Okay. So this is where the ethics play a very big role. The ethical consideration here is for instructors to understand that they have the upper hand and to not use that power in the wrong way. There are institutional policies, by the way. Usually some students don't even know about the policies, and why should you? Why should you as a student know about because we never think a student is going to initiate a relationship. And yes, maybe I could be wrong, but the policies are there, and every instructor, every administrative person in every institution, college, university knows about that. And it's very simple. Forbidden consensual relationships, forbidden. Consensual relationships when faculty have teaching, evaluative, or supervisory authority over students. Forbidden. 2 lines is there. And everybody knows about this, but most students probably don't know about it. And once again, why would you? We're talking about romantic relationships between instructors, professors, and students. One of the main issues is the conflict of interest. So please, let me define what conflict of interest is and pick some of the key points from that. A very basic definition of conflict of interest is this. It occurs when an individual's personal interest, family, friendship, financial, or social factors, could compromise his or her judgment, decisions, or actions in the workplace. I'm going to pick 3 things out of this definition to highlight. Personal interest. 1, family, friendship, financial, social factors. Personal interest. Compromise his or her judgment. And last, workplace. I bring this up and I took the time to explain conflict of interest because This situation, relationship between instructors and professors, I actually think is way beyond conflict of interest. It's beyond conflict of interest. Because if you look at the three key items that I mentioned, right? Personal interest. Obviously, if an instructor is in a relationship with a student, that is a personal, very, very personal interest. Your judgment as an instructor can be affected in many, many, many ways. Conflict of interest. And your workplace happens to be an institution and a college which you don't own. It is a workplace. So the reason I say this is beyond conflict of interest is because your day-to-day classroom activities, could you imagine? Maybe not imagine. Maybe some of you are actually already seeing this. You're in a classroom where you know very well there is something going on between the professor and one of the student. What happens to the respect factor? What is the discomfort that creates? What about the potential or the possibility of a blackmail on both sides? What if the instructor says, you dare not say anything to anyone about this here, or what? Or maybe I could fail you. Then, of course, I think we have to talk about the favoritism that happens in this year. It's an advantage that the student is going to have, and it's a false advantage because now you're able to get away with everything. How does that help you academically? How does that help you socially? How does that help you in any way? You may think you have access to everyone, but once again, remember, it is just that one instructor, and what happens after you're done with that one instructor, one course. Okay? All right. Professionalism is the key. Trust is the other thing too. If our students depend on us to do our work, to help them, this is what's going to determine what they're going to be the rest of their life. I think we owe them that professionalism, or we owe them. What about your trust, right? What about holding on to your trust? One of those gray areas actually happens a lot when you're either mentoring students, because usually in a mentoring situation is one-on-one, and we can never cross the line. And I've always said, you can never cross the line of the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal is, I am here to help you, not to love you, one, and I could go as far as like you, but there's a thick line. There's a very, very thick line between like and love, and we got to watch those areas. Okay. Now I want to talk about some of the signs that we need to watch out for. And I'm going to start with faculty because, again, as I'm doing this here, I'm sure some instructors, professors, faculty are also listening. So I'll start from there. I'll start from some of the signs that we need to watch out for, so hopefully we can help our students with that. When our female students, yes, and I'm using female because this very example is very specific to the female students, that you know, and this is also, by the way, one of the reasons we really need to be watching closely to our students, making sure we know them very well, or at least we're able to observe their behaviors in and out, how they come in daily, weekly. We have to watch very, very closely. And the reason I say this is maybe week 3, maybe week 4 in your class, you've known this female student comes to class, either one, they're sitting away in the back there, you're observing them, and then all of a sudden now they're coming to class with a lot of makeup on, wearing clothing that is very revealing. I think as an instructor, if you pay close attention, it's okay to wonder why. And now the same student is approaching you in a way that you don't think is appropriate. It could be to get some attention, but it could be also more than that. Instructors, please stick to your open door policies and adhere to them. No after office hours. Once again, I'm just saying, these are some of the red flags that faculty, professors, instructors need to watch out for, right? You might mean well, but you're also trying to protect yourself. Refrain from hugs if you feel like it's a potential for misinterpretation. Avoid discussing personal, private matters with your students, if it helps. Avoid attending parties or social events where there's alcohol involved. Again, who am I to tell all my instructors, adults on what to do? But it happens. Sometimes you feel like, hey, you want to engage with the students, and sometimes you don't know what the intentions are, okay? Be very, very, very transparent with your communication. Do not leave anything to the imagination, because that just leads to flirtation, and you want to just avoid flirtations. Okay. Again, some quick suggestions for the faculty so I can get that out of the way, as I want to focus on the signs that the students need to watch out for. Here are some red flags. You as a student, you have to be very careful with the office invitations. Instructors announce this in class. Here are my office hours to every student. If you are getting special attention beyond the office hours, and that makes you uncomfortable sometimes, it is a red flag. If you are getting extra points on homeworks, on your exams, and your grades is getting much better, we're in college. If you're getting something wrong and it's marked right, you have the right to question it, to find out why that is the case. But that could be a red flag. Special invitations and favors and advances. You should be asking yourself why there are 100 students in your class, yet you're the only one being asked or invited to the weekend barbecue, party, or what have you. And by the way, told not to tell any of your friends or not to invite any of your friends. That is a red flag. Why are you the only one with the right to call your professor John or Jane when everyone else has to call them Dr. Doe? That is a red flag. And what should you do? Well, again, for the benefit of the doubt, maybe you're feeling uncomfortable in some of the situations here. It's okay to address this with a counselor or an advisor on the basis of discomfort. Worst case scenario, sexual harassment. That's about how far you could go. Okay. But do not encourage any of the situations that I've listed here as red flags. Well, it's okay to have love in the class if it's meant for the right reasons. I'm just answering the question and providing suggestions on how to not fall in this situation. You have to remember that while this could be a relationship between two consenting adults, my college students tell me this all the time. Professor Chris, I'm old enough to make decisions. Yes. I'm old enough to do this. Yes. And I'm old enough to do that. And once again, I say yes. But if you find yourself in this situation, are you old enough to make the right decision? So once again, you have to remember that while this could be a relationship between two consenting adults, it is not right for the reasons I have provided, and that is why love in the classroom is and can be a very, very complicated and complex equation for you to solve. We have seen it play out in the movies, and while it may have a happy ending it may have a happy ending, right? We see all this in movies. Students want to have bragging rights, or students think one of the things they want to do in college is to be in a relationship with a professor. We've seen it all in the movies, and it might have a happy ending. Unfortunately, in real life, homes, families are broken, and a student's academic and emotional life can be shattered. Well, this was a tough one, I must admit. It was a tough one, but two that I will not deviate from discussing, because if it can help my students, I would do it. So yes, I hope this helps. I hope you take some time to go through some of the red flags, again, as a student, okay? I did not even talk about the mental health situations that you as a student could go through when you find yourself in this situation. Not to mention who is going to trust you, who's going to believe you. It's a very, very complicated situation to find yourself in. So, once again, seek advice, seek counseling if you find yourself in this situation. And as I always talk about this here, I'm not against love. It's got to be the right place and the right time. That's all I'm saying. Okay? All right. Once again, put your comments in this YouTube comment section there with any college questions that you have. I will address it. We'll talk about it. This is really one of the best college episodes. I don't know of any other college podcast, by the way, but this podcast, I believe its intention is right, and we are empowering minds one episode at a time. Don't drink beer, but live beer. Balance, eat well, and exercise and rest. I'll see you all next time on Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris on this very segment, Ask Professor Chris.